one of the most famous sermons of St. Bernard of Clairvaux is based on this Gospel, referred to as the Missus Est. The angel Gabriel was sent, and it portrays the whole of creation as in a state of poise and waiting, as though the cosmos were waiting for a syllable. All history is waiting, the whole universe is waiting, and then this word comes, fiat. It is thought that the present practice of the Angelus comes from a desire on the part of those who are frequenting the Holy Land from the Crusades and the time of St. Francis of Assisi onwards, to bring to the Catholic sphere a counterbalance to what they were observing in the Middle East and in North Africa. The insistence 5 times a day that the Incarnation was not true. So, to counterbalance this Muslim thrust, the practice of not a cry but a bell came in. It is still there in vast chunks of Europe. Actually here, one can just about hear it if one is listening carefully at midday. And the notion then of concentrating precisely on this Gospel 3 times a day came in, the very Gospel of the Incarnation, for it was at this point that it actually happened. Christmas was only the outworking of it. The fiat of the Madonna was the one that actually started the ball rolling with regard to eternity coming into our time. But yet, strange enough, in representing the whole human race, she was necessary. There had to be permission on the part of humanity, and she was giving it. The second Eve, and indeed, in most of these statues, I'm not sure if it's there, it's in the other one anyway, we see her precisely standing on the serpent, what is referred to as the proto-evangelium. The first announcement of the gospel is there, when there would be this crushing of the old serpent by a woman, and she has been then regarded as the second Eve, as our blessed Lord is the second Adam. Hence it is that this notion there of the consent is something to be taken seriously, because it also indicates the courtesy of our God. He will never do anything without our consent. He will not save us precisely without our consent, nor will He do anything through us and with us without our consent. It is not only an error, but actually a complete heresy to give the impression to people that God actually is going to oblige all to come into His presence. Because to give the message that all on earth will actually end up willy-nilly in the beatific vision is not only to give a completely imbalanced picture of our God, but also a completely imbalanced picture of themselves and of their dignity. Because to oblige a person who has that fundamental option of no, the absence of the fiat, to come into that presence is to oblige that person to become excruciatingly burned. That person cannot come into the presence and enjoy it. There is the story told, and it is true, it's actually on YouTube, of a person who seemed to be in some way possessed, a young man who came to Mount Athos some years ago. He had been sent there from the mainland by some priest to try and sort out his thing, and the starets, the elder who was handling him, allowed him to work alongside his monks, but on condition that he didn't open his mouth, because he explained that they're praying all the time. They're praying the Jesus prayer, and they cannot talk to each other. So he conformed, and he actually then got into that mode himself of praying the prayer of the heart, invoking therefore continuously that name which the demons cannot bear. And at a certain point, the fathers realized that this was actually having an effect on him. Despite whatever presence was in him, it was calming him down. And then the man himself, realizing that he was receiving some kind of healing, out of the blue came out with this: what about this one inside me? Should we ask for mercy for him as well? And immediately there was this noise from inside him to this effect: mercy for me? It should be for him. And he went on to describe the atrocious God that he had. In other words, in that damnation in which he was in, he was completely fixed. What he was coming out with was accusing God of having put them where they were for all eternity because of one moment in time when they all fell. He found it was completely unjust. So he was attacking God and felt that he needed mercy. And he actually was completely, fundamentally in a state of no, therefore the withdrawal of the fiat irreversibly for all eternity. And so the young man went away eventually, somewhat calmed, but that was the end of the story because of the absence of communication with the outside world. They don't know what came of him. But anyway, it is true. That is the testament they've given, showing that the demons are in that state of complete and utter absence of contact and reverse. There is no way that that will of the demons can be turned. And so it is with any soul that already in this world is hardening his heart. There is a tendency to be in league with him because they've given access to him unawares, but that has been the fiat to the demon. That first choice, fundamentally, to say yes to evil, it can actually happen fairly early on in life, especially nowadays, and to remain in that and to be in a state of output of negativity all the time is to collude with the powers that want us to be in that bad place. And if that carries on, there is then that last moment, the last final choice. The Lord does everything he possibly can. But if then even afterwards there is a refusal because of the force of habit already in the will, no, 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 then they too, 1 second after death, are in that same irreversible no state from which there's no coming back. Those who have come back are those who have gone into the beyond and had some kind of near-death experience and come back warned, but that's very rare. Normally that's it. And then they realize the company that they've been already sharing in this world and the company they're going to share forever, it's bad company. And there's no question whatsoever of seeing the light. So that's the complete picture for our good. It's a false mercy to give the impression that there's no danger. The whole gospel's thrust is serious, and the passion means that if there's all that pain, it means that there's reason for it. It's some kind of indication of the atrocious nature of what it means to be without God. And of course, since the fall of actually the firstborn of Adam and Eve, Cain, that was the state. We know that Cain didn't make it, we know from exorcism. And those who partake in his negativity will be in that state. So that's the correct nature of our humanity. We're on the losing side until we're helped. We have no automatic right. And it's false, it's incomplete theology to give any false impression as regards the easy nature of salvation. If we do so, we take away from people the very thing they need to hear to get their act together. So preaching of the gospel has to be also the complete picture. There's no news without bad news, that we're in a bad place. And all the centuries of waiting, the prophets, the just, were all in that state, precisely that St. Bernard describes, all in this state of posture, waiting for the fiat of our Blessed Lady. But then, it doesn't stop there. That fiat has to be an individual one on the part of every soul. The evangelicals take it very seriously. The traditional way that an evangelical sermon is preached on Sunday night, the morning service is different, it's for the believers, but traditionally in an evangelical setting there is an outreach and there's a challenge coming towards the end. Unfortunately, it's not very helpful for most of those who are listening because they're all in a state of prayer anyway and they've heard it all before, but it might be of some help to those who might wander in. The fact that they take it seriously, however, is also a lesson for us. Because if they take it seriously, they're actually correct about what they're trying to do. Preaching has to be challenging. And when we get into a mode of not actually challenging people at all, then we're not preaching. And any sermon in a retreat or a mission, especially, which doesn't challenge, is not doing its job. And if that's happening a lot nowadays, where people come out as they came in, not challenged, indeed the contrary, being given a feel-good factor, then Old Nick is having, even there, a field day. Because preaching, as the Gospel indicates, is precisely what the Lord uses. How shall they be challenged if no one is sent? I just conclude, the Lord, in our case, rarely sends an angel from heaven, although our guardian angel is continuously nudging and inspiring, and that too can be picked up and can be sharpened, and that also needs a certain fiat, a mode of yes every time we feel pulled authentically. But it usually comes through the form of secondary causes, that is, things that happen, because God's angels in practice are events and people. They can also be books and nowadays DVDs and things which actually do give a message from God, forms of preaching. But in practice we need to pick up the language of God. It has been said that history is His story, and therefore the events of providence are also a language which we need to pick up and not refuse. Because at that point too, even an unpleasant event, maybe a car accident, can be something which on bended knees is asking for a fiat. I will not explode, I will accept this. Because it indicates our wedding of the will that made us. We're not in that state of fiat until we're in a state of yes, 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 unconditionally to what the Lord is saying, and therefore willing. And that gives us also a certain freedom, because many people spend their existence on earth refusing the event, losing energy without profit. Whereas a certain serenity of acceptance gives that linear movement where whatever it is equal unto my will, because my will has been handed over. The Lord actually did indicate in the case of one mystic that the way in which Our Lady gave that Ecce, ancilla, Domini, behold the handmaid of the Lord, let it be done unto me according to thy word, which we say in the Angelus, was the way that actually he wanted the soul to be before him, because it contains complete abdication. And he said to this mystic, purity captivates my eyes. That would be certainly the Madonna. But then he added, humility captivates my eyes and heart. For humility is precisely an abdication of the will, a not wanting to be in command of the universe, a not wanting to be in some way the centre of adoration and emulation, letting God reign. And that was the attitude of the Madonna here, and also the attitude of the angel when on bended knees he asked for permission. And in classic iconography, quite often that angel is presented in a dalmatic, wearing a deacon's clothing, the dalmatic. The deacon serves, the deacon does not command. And he's at the service of divine majesty. Something that we can take with us now as we come to the altar. And this is one of the 2 days in the year, the other is Christmas Day itself, when still, even in the present rite, we kneel at the Incarnatus Est, precisely because this is the moment at which it happened. And gentle Mary meekly bowed her head, to me as it pleaseth God, she said, my soul shall Lord and magnify his holy name, most highly favoured Lady, Lord.